the madhabs of one of those four great imams, if it was from the khair that Allah wanted for this ummah, and it was something to the degree that some people make it out to be, that after choosing Islam, basically their next choice is to choose one of the four madhabs. Is how they introduce Islam to some people. Now that you've chosen to be a Muslim, we congratulate you. Now I'm a Hanafi and I suggest that you be a Hanafi too. You have to make another choice after you're a Muslim now. You have to choose your denomination. You have to be a Hanbali or a Shafi'i or a Maliki or a Hanafi. If that was the case, then the Messenger ﷺ, as the companions used to say, there's no khair coming after the Prophet ﷺ that's important for this ummah except that he showed it to us. How can it be such a big decision upon every Muslim for the last 1200 years? And the Prophet ﷺ never spoke about it. Rather, he gave us guidance. What do we do when we differ? And he didn't say hold tight to one of the four madhabs. He said hold to my sunnah and to the sunnah of the Khulafa al-Rashideen, to the sunnah of the rightly guided caliphs after him. And the Prophet ﷺ furthermore said, إِنِّي تَارِكٌ فِيكُمْ ما إن تمسكتم به لن تضلوا بعدي كتاب الله وسنتي. I am leaving you with something that if you hold close to it or hold tightly to it, you will never go astray after me. The book of Allah and my sunnah. So it's not permissible ever for a person to hold to statements that he desires or to take positions on issues in Islam based on his whims and based on what is convenient for him, and based on what his cravings like and what is best suitable for him. Rather, he holds to what he believes to be the order of Allah Azza wa Jal, and what Allah wants from him, found in the book of Allah, and what has been authentically narrated from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some people, they say, al-ikhtilafu rahmah. Al-ikhtilafu rahmah. That differing is a kind of mercy. Differing is a kind of mercy. And some of the people who have no knowledge of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, they ascribe this to the Messenger ﷺ, and they say this is a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. He said, al-ikhtilaf rahmah. The scholars of hadith have researched this issue and this claim, and they've come to the conclusion that this is a hadith that is la asla lahu, has absolutely no foundation, as something narrated from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ikhtilaf is not a rahmah. Ikhtilaf in the deen, where one person claims that an issue is halal and another person comes and claims that the same issue is haram, is not the rahmah of Allah. Rather, the rahmah of Allah is in holding to the sunnah and holding to unity and holding to what is correct from the book and the sunnah and being united upon what is correct. And it is not division and separating into opinions that oppose each other and clash with each other. This is division, and this is prohibited in the Islamic legislation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has talked about this in the ayat that we mentioned. وَلَا يَزَالُونَ مُخْتَلِفِينَ إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبُّكَ. How can it be that differing, the people differing, meaning direct differing, that there is no allowance for us to say both are right? One has to be right and the other has to be wrong. One says halal, the other says haram. It's intellectually impossible to say the same issue is halal and haram at the same time. Has to be one or the other. How can it be that when the people have divided up over an issue, that this is the mercy of Allah, when Allah Himself has said the people will go on differing except for those He has put His mercy on? That means the one whom Allah has had mercy on has been exempted from ikhtilaf, and has been made to be in accordance to the book and the sunnah and the unity with those who are upon the book and the sunnah, and he is not differing. Rather, the differing that goes on between people that differ and oppose the book of Allah and the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they will go on differing and opposing until Allah puts His mercy on them. So, to allow us to understand what some of the scholars have said when they said this phrase, al-ikhtilafu rahmah, and they meant it in another way than what we have presented just now. Some scholars have said al-ikhtilafu rahmah, that differing is a mercy, and they mean by that, and this is a correct meaning, that the Sahaba differed, and their differing for this ummah was a mercy. What that means is, if the Sahaba never differed on any issue, then every Muslim would be required to follow one ruling, and it's either following the consensus of the scholars, because there's never been differing, or it's hellfire. No ijtihad, no testing the people's intellects, no showing, no standing out, none of the ulama standing out over others because of their intelligence and their quickness and their sharpness of their intellect. No real test in the dunya, because everything is ijma'. If everything is ijma', then there's no real test for the believer. There's no way that the intelligent one shines, or his intelligence will become known, or his knowledge will become known. The knowledgeable one would not shine over the ignorant one, because everything is ijma'. There's no need to even think about anything. It's either ijma', you're with the ijma', or you're in the hellfire. Nothing else. So then, because the Sahaba differed in issues, and the Prophet ﷺ addressed the idea of someone trying to reach the proper decision in Islam, and he gets 2 rewards if he's right, and 1 reward if he's wrong. The mercy of Allah Azza wa Jalla is established there for someone who has been mistaken and actually opposed the correct position in an issue, that he receives the mercy of Allah because of his attempt to reach the truth. So here's the mercy of Allah. This would not be available if every issue was ijma'. Every issue was in consensus. Anybody who differs with that is in the hellfire. As some of the scholars use the ayat in Surah An-Nisa, I believe, وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقَ الرَّسُولِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمْ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. Whoever opposes the messenger or contradicts the messenger after the clear guidance has been conveyed to him, and he follows a way other than the way of the believers. The scholar said this is ijma'. The way of the believers here is ijma', scholarly consensus. So when he contradicts the messenger and he opposes ijma', then we'll turn him to what he has turned himself to and put him into the hellfire. What an evil abode. So if everything was ijma', you're either with the ijma' or you're in the hellfire. Every issue, one by one. From the first issues of tahara and wiping over the khuf and the water and wudu, all the way to the issues of marriage, divorce, the establishing of Islamic punishments. Everything is ijma', and anyone who differs in any way would be destroyed. So here the Islamic legislation has allowed for people to differ, seeking the truth, seeking to reach the correct position, seeking to reach that which is correct with Allah Azza wa Jal, using the evidences from the book and the sunnah. And as a mercy from Allah, if he doesn't actually attain that, but he intends that, he doesn't intend to follow his desires, and he doesn't intend to oppose the correct position, but he ends up opposing the correct position, he didn't get it right, he still gets rewarded. That's from the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because every issue is not ijma'. However, if he opposes ijma', if there is an issue with ijma', and he opposes the ijma', then we don't say that he gets 1 reward with Allah Azza wa Jal, because this was not an affair that he was allowed to make ijtihad in. There's ijma'. The scholars have consensus over this issue. There's no need for research. There's no need to apply reasoned thinking. Yarhamukallah. So then the mizan, or the scale that we are to use to weigh the correct position versus the wrong position, is in our hands. It is something we have been given and has been left preserved for this ummah. The Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah Azza wa Jal has not turned us over as trusts to people that we all have to refer to certain people. But Allah Azza wa Jal has said in a general way that we are to return to our scholars and ask our scholars for guidance and for help in issues that are a concern to us in our deen, and we are not able to find out the correct position on our own. And Allah has said, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. And it's very important here to talk about the issue of the madhabs. The 4 well-known, established madhabs known to the Muslims. The imams of these madhabs were indeed great scholars of Islam. And they were people who called to exactly what has been mentioned today in this lecture. Making the criteria between truth and falsehood the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And none of them ever put themselves forward in a position to be the criteria between haqq and batil. Rather, they understood themselves to be scholars. As Imam Malik said, مَا مِنَّا